All right. I will call to order the workshop meeting at 6:03. And we're here to budget workshop.
Okay, sorry, I had a slight error there, so we're calling the meeting to order at 6:03.
Yep.
Technical difficulties. All right, so budget workshop. The budget workshop for our newer board members. This is the opportunity. We have given the board the budget now for a full month and updated it with any additional items. We are now up to where we have our levy amount from the county. So we are included in the board packet is the updated draft, which I'll look at. The following items are included in the budget. It is a 1% increase. This is the statutory amount we can increase the budget over the previous year's levy. So the increase of 1% over the 2020 levy amount is the maximum for the base plus any new construction, etc. So that's how high we can go up. That's what we're proposing to do. The revised tax levy amount from the assessor's office estimate came in, and the amount of new construction was higher than we originally estimated. So we have factored that into the new budget. We updated our capital plan, our capital budget within that budget to include a new picnic shelter in 2021 at an amount of $26,000. We updated various admin budget expenses as more information was received since the last distribution of the budget. So all in all, 2021 budget still remains strong with an estimated P&L of $90,814. Previous version had a P&L of about $91,914, and the 5-year projection still remains positive with all the fundamentals and the fundamental principles in the green. I should note the items included in the capital plan. I'm gonna ask really quick if everybody can just mute themselves when they're not actively talking. That would be great. Thank you. I just want to make a couple of notes on this. Items included in the capital plan for 2021. These items were picked based on the commissioner's average rankings and some costing factors, as well as we have some items that we are planning to accomplish this year within our operational budget. So the beams that we're going to talk about tonight in our regular meeting, the replacement of those is in this year's budget, so it is prioritized this year, and we're getting that done this year. The other items that we've already discussed are we're going to have happen in this year's budget. Some of those, so those are not the priority. Is we're taking those, and then some were just too costly to do within our operational budget next year, so we're pushing those out a little bit more. As of the writing of the memo, I had only been contacted by Krista with any questions, and Krista, I believe, spoke with Peggy on those questions, and I believe got the answer she was looking for. So let me, yes, okay, so let me go back here and close this out and pull up the actual budget, and we'll see if there's any other board members that have questions on the actual budget. But you can see here our beginning cash and all of our items here are in the green. So as Matt has talked about last year in our budget process, for those who were here for that, our first fundamental principle is our ending reserve balance. It has to be at least 25% of the following year's total expenses. That is in the green for the whole 5-year projection. The beginning cash, the requirement of that is 25% of the current year's expenses. That's fundamental principle number 2. That is green throughout the 5-year projection. The number 3, annual transfer of 10% of the levy to the capital projects fund at the beginning of the year. That is in the green, able to be done. And the end of the year transfer of 50% of any amount over and above the required reserve fund beginning cash amounts to the capital fund is green. So if those weren't, this spreadsheet is set up for those to turn a different color right here. So the fundamental principle here is green. That means that we've hit the target. Now, I will preface that with saying that what we did do is we did in our operational budget for next year and in our projection for next year, we did look at reducing our program revenue significantly, and our program expense correlated with that drop down. So we didn't change anything dramatically. What we did is we are anticipating we will not be able to run as many programs as we have in a normal year. We are anticipating some problems with COVID carrying over into 2021 and having to deal with those through at least a portion of the year before we can get back to normal operations again. So that's where we stand. Does anyone on the board have any questions on the budget as it stands or any comments?
Yeah, Doug, your 157 projection for the program's revenue, is that broken down? Like, how does that scale? You were just talking about a ramp back to normal operations. Like, is that like we see there 75% of a normal year? Or
I'll let Carrie does that portion of the budget for the details. So let me pull up. I can pull up the detail here because we do have that, and Carrie can speak to that. Carrie, you want to comment on that?
So, so the detail is here in that gray column. So I didn't do across the board, 75%. What I did was look at the feasibility of certain programs. And since then, I would say some of, this was done back in August. So some of them I would say are maybe more looking like they may not happen. For instance, youth basketball. But so mostly I looked at the programs individually to see, whether they were likely to be able to run or at reduced capacity. And, a lot of it is guesswork. A lot of it depends on whether we'll have access to gyms or not. And so far, that's not happening in the near future.
We are working on that though, but it is going to be a slow road.
Yeah, so I think, I feel like pickleball is going to be a bit more impacted than I had hoped, just because we've run out of good weather and the numbers have been low. And again, we haven't been able to find a location to bring it back indoors. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so no, that's perfect. So there were you did it program by program, and like for the example you see on the screen there, sailing, you're saying it's not going to happen, so you zeroed it out, but you just downgraded pickleball because of the ramp back to getting available space, and same with adult softball. Well, it looks like adult softball is the one that's close to projection.
Yeah, because hopefully our projection would be that by summer, hopefully this year we were able to do adult softball in some form. So we're hoping that an outdoor program where social distancing is somewhat potentially possible, we could potentially do again next year. It's a lot of the indoor stuff that we're going to have issues with. But yes, Carrie did a great job going program by program.
Yeah, and just so you know, some of the programs that for instance, adult sailing seems like it should be a fairly safe program, but it's most of the instructors, well, all of them pretty much are in an older population. And so the instructors are not available. Well, they may be, who knows?
Sure. So you would say that there's a decent amount of risk in that revenue number?
Overall?
Your total projection that rolls up to 157,000. There's risk in that because things have not improved since August the way maybe we hoped they would.
Correct.
Well, yeah, I would say I would clarify that, Matt, again with the same clarification we had this year. It's yes, there is a certain amount of risk in the 157. However, that also means there's a certain amount of risk in the program's expense of 139, because if we're not going to run a program, if we're not going to run basketball, we're not paying to rent gyms. So we're not going to pay
Sure.
that as well. So yes, there is a certain amount of risk, but we are looking at approximately, 40 to 57, about a 140 to 157, about a $18,000 total net that we're looking at making out of programs next year.
Right.
So that while there is some risk, that it is not. I think it's a calculated risk.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, just to me that looks like our area of greatest uncertainty anyway.
Yes,
and you're
definitely.
right. We can cover as we did this year. We can curtail expenditures associated with programs that don't happen, but you don't get 100 cents on the dollar, right? This year we got a fraction of that. Just there's some good costs, obviously. So it's just. That's my biggest takeaway from that portion of it.
Yeah, and just the ones that are our biggest net revenue makers are unfortunately the riskier ones, like basketball and the triathlon. They've published guidelines recently for allowing a pathway to races, so that was really good news to see that. It'll be diminished if
you have the full triathlon in the budget, right?
Yeah, I think I did. Yes, less expenditures for transfers. People who chose rather than a refund, they kindly said just transfer it to next year.
Yeah, got it. Okay, understand. Okay.
Okay. Any other comments, questions from other commissioners?
Yeah, go ahead. If anybody else has a comment, go ahead. I got another one. I just want to make sure we see.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Matt. Doesn't look like anybody else has a comment at this point.
Okay, so just be aware, like we're, as Doug says, the math shows us green in these key areas in the out years beyond next year. So this is just forecast. The budget that we're approving and proposing is just for next year. But these are important, right? Because these, like the projection of reserve balance and ending cash, beginning cash, are key as we look forward for things like levy planning, M&O levy planning, and that rolls down to how much available money we have for capital projects when something comes up, like pickleball or the roof, the support post in the restrooms or whatever. And so being green is important for those purposes. But if you look, we tend to, in the out years, have softer estimates on growth in certain expense categories. Like if you look in 2022, it's unlikely that we're going to only grow admin by 0.4%. And in 2024, unlikely it's going to be 1.7%. So there are some, we're not being super conservative in our estimates there. It's not unusual. We've done this in the past, but that as we look like in the 2022 budget, that's where the things are going to change for us. So this will continue to evolve. I would just say in general, we're probably closer to our projections than, we have less margin than we show, just as a general point. I mean, these are our good, I think, decent estimates at this point, but I think that's the area that we're going to see change in 2022, 23, and 24. Anyway, just commentary.
Well, I would echo that comment. Anything beyond this year is a fairly rough estimate based on trends, based on what we've seen happen. The admin budget, I would say, should be fairly close. A lot of those are fixed costs. The things that would be a variance would be insurance. We already know what the salary plan projects out for next year and for the year after. And we do have a lot of staff that have now been here for long enough that they are at the top step of their salary range. So they are only going to get a cost of living increase going forward unless they change position to a higher or a different position within the district. So I just note, yes, we do try and project out as best we can. I believe that we have to do a levy in a couple years for the fall for 20. Peggy, correct me. Where are we with the levy? Are we in year 2 right now of 4?
Yeah, it resets in 2023.
Okay, so we are in year 2. So in 2022, we would have to go up for a levy in 2023.
Yes.
Okay, so we will be doing a levy not next year, but the following year, and resetting our rate and starting over again and looking at where we are at that point. So those are things to consider as well. So just keeping all of that in mind, does anybody else have any questions, concerns, points they would like to make on the budget? We got 11 minutes before we can start the regular meeting. So go ahead if you want to ask.
A question about the capital projects, what's left for this year? So I know that a couple items are coming up later in the meeting. Is there anything else?
Tom, we're planning, I believe we're planning on that. We've got the posts that we're going to do. We are going to look, I believe we're doing the roof on the doghouse. Is that have we got a firm quote on that yet, Tom?
So I've got 2 firm bids. I'm waiting on a third to come in. It's been tough to get the roofers pinned down with the nice weather. They're obviously trying to beat the rain and the wet season. So I assume by next meeting I'll have 3 bids, and we'll look at where we're at in the budget for approval on that project.
So that would be the other item that we would do, would be the roof on the doghouse, which is probably approximately 20 grand. And we had that factored into this year's budget. We were holding to see if we could fit it in this year.
Can you, Doug, scroll to that page of the budget on the screen, the capital improvements and equipment?
I thought I had already clicked on it, but apparently it's not coming up. There you go. So we had that right there in the 2020 year.
Yeah, can you scroll down so we can see the full list for 2021? Yeah, so can you clarify that the pickleball court one, that 36,000 is for what? Is that the update to the ones that we've already got, or is that some portion of the ones that we've just generally talked about?
I think it's Tom, did you get that number?
Yep. Okay. So what that would be creating 2 full-time dedicated pickleball courts in that area right behind the retention pond at the sports complex site. So they would be 2 concrete courts with full-time standards and nets. I think we included money to paint them. So we would have 2, full-time dedicated courts in the sunshine, away from all the trees. And, I think playability would be pretty darn good unless we had any frost situations out in that area.
Did that include a fence, Tom?
I don't believe it included a fence because some of the feedback I got was they don't really like having it enclosed.
Okay.
But I mean, it's all stuff we can look at. That was just kind of a placeholder, just looking at, rough costs on that. And it's just kind of, there's been so much buzz about that the last few months. I'm just trying to get 2 courts. If we want to do 4 courts, we can clearly add on to that and move that down the road. But it's just to try and get something in a better location than what we've already got, going into the fall and winter. I know that area is just not going to be playable.
And again,
I'm assuming that means not covered.
Correct.
No, not covered.
But could be
and
covered.
Not lit either, right?
And not lit, no. So not covered, not lit.
So it's basically a 70 by 70 square of concrete for 2 courts. That's basically the footprint that that the 2 courts are 2 of the 3 courts existing in that overflow parking area. 70 by 70, we can look at pricing out what a roof would cost. But I think if we got something there that's usable the majority of the year, then we can look, down the road at, you could come in and cover an area like that.
I'm sorry, say that again, Tom. Was that in the parking lot or was that out in the field when we walked out?
Out in the field.
Thank you.
Field.
Good.
So, and what I will say about these, and I was gonna point with my pen, but you guys can't see that. All of these here, these items, the flail mower attachment we've put in because that's something that we would use. The restroom repair, the pickleball court, sports area complex rough regrade, the new picnic shelter. These are items from that list. However, if we get into next year and we look at it and we go, just like this year, we can go, okay, we're gonna hold on the roof replacement because we don't know what might happen. We're gonna hold on this until later in the year and make sure we have the funds available to do it. Or if you guys come up with something and like we get into next year and we go, hey, we really need a whatever it is, a new roof on something. The roof burst somewhere and we got to add up to 50,000. We can take our 36,000 pickleball court and our 26,000, picnic shelter, pull them out for a year, replace what has to happen, and then push things out and restructure for the next year. Okay. So these are not, a budget is a plan and a plan can change. So just keep that in mind as we're going. This is what we are planning for. If we get into 2021 and things go crazy, we can adjust.
We've been very, very fluid years with our capital, and going into next year, if we have an issue that comes up, let's say with the campground project, we can kind of easily get gears and say, hey, we need an extra $10,000 or $15,000 for treatment on our water system to add water lines. This is kind of where we divert that money to kind of the unexpected things that come up, and so it's just kind of a fluid plan. And I like to try and hold off to the end of the year to see how many emergency things popped up. Do we need to deal with a couple of rotten poles that were getting replaced, anything like that comes up. So it's never really a perfect plan, but in an aging facility like we have, we're always having issues come up that we're dealing with, so it gives us a little flexibility.
Any other questions, comments, concerns about the budget?
Yeah, I have a question, and maybe this goes to Tom, but I'm extremely interested in the pickleball courts because I just think that's something that's growing very quickly, and it's just inviting to so many different people and requires so little area. I'm not suggesting that it needs a roof, but I am suggesting, just interestingly enough, what it would take to get 4 courts versus 2 courts. I say that because I know that 2 courts, much like tennis and other things, the number of players, and Carrie, feel free to chime in here. It seems like there's a great interest in it, and it's one of those things that's holding on, and that's just older people. I think if you had a dedicated place, you could run a program there, meaning you could have teens in there, younger kids playing that game. With 2 courts, it becomes difficult. So from a standpoint of how we spend our money, I just think that concrete pad for pickleball is one of those that you get a lot of bang for your buck.
Yeah, I mean, all we need to do is double that number. And that's just basic number of pouring the slab and the standards for 2 courts. What I've seen over on the other side with 3 available courts, generally 2 are used. And so, just from a money standpoint, I put in 2 courts because it fit into the budget. And I think that if we utilize more than just a couple days and we spread out the use, 2 courts will get us through for now. And if we want to do 2 courts the following year, let's add it in. That's where I went from, just from a rough budget standpoint.
And I guess what I was thinking is that if it's just $36,000, you know, and I didn't, you know, I wasn't necessarily thinking of that doubling, but rather the effort it takes to excavate, clear, concrete work, all that stuff. That once you do that, you know, that number doesn't necessarily just double because you've already got the equipment there. You're already making the effort to build. And I know it's a rough estimate probably, but that's why I'm suggesting if you're going through the effort to make 2 courts, you know, is it something that, you know, we should be looking at more just due to the fact that I think it would get the use, and maybe I'm off base here. Sorry, Carrie, I probably cut you off, but feel free to
No, that's okay. Yeah, so just as a frame of reference, what we were doing when we were indoors was 3 days a week and using 4 courts, 3 to 4 courts at a time. So that's what we were doing. That was indoors, and that was when there were very few other options. And so we could fill 4 courts at a time, and that would be easier to staff if we're running an actual program. But it may not translate directly over to needing 4 courts. But I think it would be nice, and it does seem like there should be some sort of savings in doing it all at once rather than in 2 parts. But I'm not really versed in those logistics of building projects.
Yeah, the pickleball court goes in along with the rough area regrade out back. And if we're going to do the pickleball court, obviously we need to get the area leveled. I'm hoping those 2 projects kind of run in conjunction. So the area would be leveled, you know, to a point that we could come in and form those right up. And that's basically subbing that work out. So that concrete number would basically just double. I mean, it's forming up an area that's basically level, ready to go. And it's concrete and time, which is unfortunately prevailing wage. So pretty close numbers on the concrete work. We would double it. You know, it's material and time, and just doubling the basically the poles, the standard.
Hey, Tom, you didn't have that space earmarked for anything else as far as eventually expanding to 4 courts would be not messing with a bigger plan of yours?
Well, yeah, I was gonna say that, you know, that when we walked it, one of the things we talked about was exactly that point. The artificial turf field project is coming off of field 4 in that direction, depending on how it ultimately goes. So yeah, that we gotta, before we do anything like that, we gotta look at that whole area, figure out what fits where, for sure.
Yeah, and it's actually on the other side of the paved path, the existing paved path. So it's not behind field 4. It's behind the retention ponds.
Right. But in one of the artificial turf grants, we end up, you know, with the combination baseball field and soccer field.
Yes.
And it ends up being that kind of parallelogram triangle that sticks out into that area.
Yeah, Matt, I don't think it will stick out that far. And if anything, it would go closer to the woods than across the path. I don't think we should have an issue with that area. But you are correct. We should verify that before we start throwing down cement and constructing something over there. Any other questions, comments, concerns about the budget? Okay. Well, it's Josh. It is after 6:30. So if you want to adjourn our budget hearing and start our regular meeting, we can start a regular meeting. We can do that.
Yep. I will adjourn the budget meeting at 6:33, and we will call to order the regular meeting at 6:33.
Okay.
First order of business, public comment. Do we have any?
I did not receive any public comment from anybody for tonight's meeting. And the next item would be the approval of minutes. I'll pull those up for the 9/16 meeting. Did anybody have any questions on the minutes?
Yeah, if there's no questions, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Jennifer, I.
Krista, I.
Eric, I.
Matt, aye.
Josh, aye. All right, we'll move on to
This
the
conference will now be recorded.
treasurer's report.
All right, hold on. Let me get out of there. I just realized I had forgot to record the meeting, so I just started that recording now. So we'll start with the treasurer's report section. I'll pull that up for you, Matt. Hold on. Let me minimize this. Open up. Oh, it's already there. All right. And there you go.
Okay, so just slight change from last month in terms of the overall position, just slightly up in favorability. So where you can see now at the end of September, we're 66,000 ahead. You know, the budget projection is the pink line and the blue line is actual. So the cumulative number, and you can see the breakdown top and bottom with revenue on the, revenue on the top and expenses on the bottom. And we'll look at the individual detail slides here in a second. So slightly better than last month, 66K positive. Next slide. You can see revenue. We've stabilized on the downside with revenue, and the color coding is the majority is programs, obviously. So the tune of 103K unfavorable. Sorry, that box shouldn't be green, but I was getting a little bleary-eyed. And then on the expense side, we counter that with 170K. Next slide. 170K positive, favorable. And you can see the majority of that control is happening in programs, but we're also controlling in the other budget areas. So net is plus 66. And that's cumulative again. And then the fund balance slide shows again, we're on plan. You can see that portion of go back to the first slide, Doug, just to, yeah, so you can see that portion where we are below the line on the projection. So you can see the net impact on the M&O fund. So go to the last slide now. There you go. So on plan. So the thing we need to anticipate with the budget, you see that reserve objective line, the green line, and where the reserve fund is at the objective. So that resets, as you saw in the budget projection, that reset every year to the forward 12 month, the ensuing average monthly expenditure, which if you remember back to that budget slide, we're going up. So we will need to reset that reserve objective higher and use year-end money to plus up the reserve fund in the December timeframe so that we reach the objective for January and then ride the objective all the way at that higher value for the balance of 2021. So that's the next action you'll see with the budget is that reset of the reserve objective and the plus up of the reserve fund. Any questions on any of the budget elements? Okay, then we can pull up the vouchers.
All right, I'm going to unmute myself. All right, so I'll roll through these really quick. Since Friday, when this was posted to the board, board packet, we have paid an invoice for climbing instruction for tree climbing. We have purchased a grate at Hanson's Building Supply. We've a belt from Island Auto Supply. What else? Some bleach and some nuts and bolts at Sebo's. Some janitorial supplies. And that's it. Any questions on the vouchers?
If there are no questions, I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers for 85,463.02.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Jennifer, I.
Krista, I.
Eric, aye.
Matt, aye.
Josh, aye.
Okay, and just a reminder to everybody that you do have to do the usual email since we are meeting virtually to confirm that you did that and the actual amount, and if you need that after the fact, just shoot Peggy or I an email and we'll get you the amount. Moving on. Staff report. So last month we had, a lot. We canceled Zumba in the park due to rain. We had pickleball averaging about 6 to 8 per day. The old growth tree climbing, which we just saw the invoice for. We have partnered with the Island Athletic Club to bring Zumba to the park. It has been a hit. We've extended it, but it is weather dependent. So we're going to see that continuing, hopefully, as weather permits. Pickleball, I am working with our interlocal committee of Eric and Jennifer to reach out to the school district on this because we do need to start talking about how we come out of the COVID restrictions with the school district, and we are starting that with the discussion. And I just sent out the email today, and I already got a response from Joe. We are going to look at establishing a vision statement. She wanted a little more detail as to what we meant by a vision statement, so I'm going to follow up with that and kind of talk her through. We're looking at how we come out of this and get all the facilities working best for the community. We're all able to do whatever we need to do, and we're working collaboratively, and we want to just sit down and plan that out. Island County told us that they will not approve a permit for the polar bear dive, so it is unlikely that they'll approve a triathlon permit in time for our usual registration start date, unless things change significantly here. So that's for registration. Hopefully it won't be that bad, but we'll see where we go from here. And then we do, like I said, have to work on the school district about gym usage and how we're going to do that. There is a link in the report to the fall activity guide, so you guys can peruse that at your leisure, and a few pictures here of some of the botanical jewelry class. There's a picture of Zumba in the park and some of the pickleball folks there. Okay. On facilities and grounds, the winds and rain have returned. We're slowly switching to cleanup mode around the park. We've lost a few trees and are now into full-on leaf cleanup, needle cleanup mode. We sent the large Toro mower off for repair, and when it comes back, we're going to install the big broom on it so we can clean the parking lots with that. The 5R chips that were approved last meeting have been blown into on both playgrounds, and we are getting a proposal on replacing the 2 support poles on the concession stand. We'll talk about that later in the meeting. For me, I spent the entire first week after our last board meeting reviewing WWRP local parks projects. There were 80 projects over a span of 5 days, and I did see some good things and some not so good things. So it was interesting to learn more about what people put in their proposals and what they're actually applying for. I have Trustland Trails, I have worked up a map that I will show you when we get into comprehensive plan for Trustland Trails future planning. And we're going to take that. I've already reached out to the county critical areas folks on that to kind of sit down and go, do we need a permit? What permit do we need? If we do need a permit, what can we do to alter the plan so we don't have to go through a permitting process. So having that discussion ahead of time before we take this to the community, and then we'll take it out to the community. Did meet with Eric and Jennifer on scheduling this meeting to discuss the facilities and visioning statement going forward with the school district. Met with Matt and some foundation members over on the site that had been identified at the park entrance as a potential aquatic facility site, and they've flagged a facility concept layout. So if any of you would like to come and take a look at it, you can either check in with Matt, or I kind of know where it is myself too, and walked around a little bit with them and saw a little bit of it. But I'm going to try and set up a few group meetings where we can have a small group with a maximum of 2 commissioners in it to kind of have a feedback kind of thing, and we'll talk more about that in the regular meeting as well. I signed yesterday the LWCF agreement, so we are now, I will be sitting down with Jennifer for the Waterman property and going through a purchase and sale agreement and getting all the I's dotted and T's crossed so we can schedule a closing date and finish that aspect of it. We need to do all of that to get the 2 grant fund pools of money into escrow so we can purchase the property. And that's all I have on that. If anybody has, I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has on the staff report.
Just a question about the property purchase. I don't happen to have a map of that property, nor how it fits with the school property. I'd love to take a look at that just as a reminder.
Sure. You did. Yeah, I can look that. I can get that to you, Krista. I don't know that I have it right at my fingertips here. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. I just, they've been doing a lot of work on those trails. There are all new signs and they look fantastic.
So let me take a quick peek here and see if I've got anything. I don't know that I do.
Yeah, that work is on the trails that are on the property, Krista.
Part of them are on our property. Most of them are on school district property. Okay, there are some that cross the Waterman property, but the majority of the trails are actually on school district property. We found that out as we started going through this. So yes, there are trails. Actually, I might be able to pull it up since I have the jump drive here. Let's see.
Do you know who's doing that work?
I think part of it was. Go ahead.
Today, I saw Ed Halloran, Port Commissioner, and Craig, I believe is his name. He's the help me out here, Eric, for the elementary school, leads the physical education program.
Oh, Craig Stelling. Yeah, I think it's the school's leading it, Tom.
And then the Rotary Club West Side is, Gordy Edberg is making all of the signs.
So this is kind of, this red square is the property we own. You can see a lot of the trails are just kind of on the edge. There is a couple of trails that actually here kind of go in and through, but most of this is not, none of that has been done yet. So there's very few actual trails on the property we are purchasing. It is kind of like something that we could take and go, okay, we're going to add on and bring this, and we're going to go off of this and go into here. So there is some opportunity to a great opportunity to expand, but most of this trail system is on school district property. Okay.
Thank you very much.
No problem. It was easier than I thought it was going to be to find that. All right. Any other questions on the staff report? Okay. Moving on. Comprehensive plan programs. So on this, few things. Campground. I have had Tom mark out campsites and stake them throughout 20 campsites, 2 pull through and 18 back end campsites on that first loop. I then went and got the GPS unit from the county. I mapped those sites out as best I could. It's kind of rough, but I've then had that uploaded from the county and forwarded through me to Brennan and Associates, and they are starting work on a final grading and clearing map for the county review process. Tom also went and labeled and counted all the trees that will need to be removed for the campground construction for that first loop once approved, because we needed that number for the county as well, and it's approximately 30 would need to be removed, and most of these are alder or hemlock trees that are overhanging the sites where the campsites are, or are hazardous trees. So those would be something that we would remove regardless. We're not taking out trees for the roadway that much, 1 or 2 maybe to make sure that we don't have accidents, but other than that we should be good. Waterman property, I was notified last week that I would finally get, like on Friday after I left for the day, I received an email saying that they had the agreement and they could email it to me. So I emailed them back, and I heard back on Monday that they were going to send me the agreement. I signed it on Tuesday, sent it back to them. So we will now be sitting down and going through. I have the RCO escrow payment request checklist that I will be sitting down and going through and crying a lot and calling Jennifer as much as possible and having this done as quickly as we can so that we can move forward on this and hopefully come to a great resolution with the Waterman family and get this property under our umbrella. I did meet with Matt. We flagged the foundation of a concept building on the property beside the park entrance. We will be scheduling some walkthroughs over the next week or so with key players to review this layout and look at options before progressing. A week ago, well now almost a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, on Friday, October 9th, Tom and his crew worked with the contractors and went through to dig holes for the septic review for the facility. That data has been passed on to Davido for analysis and to look at what would be possible on the site. More information on that as we progress. That's all I really had on comprehensive plans. I did include, in case anybody was interested, a couple of things here. The Waterman property contract is there. It's really long and really boring, but if you want to see it, you can see it. And then Matt, I did have the original PowerPoint. I don't know that we want to go, that you sent me with the facility layout, that we can kind of pull up if you want to kind of walk through it briefly. I don't know that we want to go through the whole rigmarole until we have it done, but if you want to briefly walk through it, we could do that.
Well, yeah, just got to figure out in GoToMeeting how to share this one snapshot in. Where are the share controls in this thing? Or do you have to tell me?
I think I have to give you permission, so hold on a second.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just show this picture and then walk through kind of what was the exercise.
All right, I'm going to make you presenter. There you go.
Okay. I've been made the presenter. Okay. Share. Okay. There. Share. Okay. You see that?
Not yet.
Still loading.
Says
there we go.
Says people can see your.
Yep, we can see it now.
Okay. Cancel it. Let's see if it comes up. Okay. Now, can you see it?
Yes.
There you go.
Okay. So what the exercise was to take, we've got all these PowerPoints with just like rectangles just sitting on this property randomly. And the exercise was, okay, if we put it on this property, where would it actually go? And what would it fit? And, the point was to pull out all the issues that you don't find until you actually try to do that. Like this whole wetland thing, like we have this thing that says wetland with a buffer, but so Doug and the staff gave a ton of feedback into this to get this thing rolling. And then Tom, when I walked out here, Tom joined me and we kind of walked this area over here to see what are we actually talking about. And this is and Tom, you can provide more detail, but essentially we've got the headwaters of the Maxwellton flowing through the park, essentially between our building and the trail, the lower trail on the 40 acres, or the, whatever we call it. Is that fair to say, Tom?
Yeah, it's mainly the standing water portion when we have that max flow in the winter is mainly behind the existing office, but it's extremely wet. Yes. But between the existing path and the tree line, there's multiple depressions in there. And so we'll actually have standing water that works all the way to the main entrance right across from the basketball court.
Yeah. Yeah. We're dug into the question about whether or not this is an actual wetland. It's not logged by the county as a wetland, but it may or may not meet the criteria for a wetland that the county has established. But just assuming that it does, it will require, plus or minus, it will require a 100-foot buffer between where it's wet and where you want to build anything. So that screens out this entire portion of the site. So again, the whole point of this exercise was, does the building actually fit? And then the question and Tom's and feedback, good feedback that got us to think about, okay, how do you orient a building like this? You orient it east-west so that you get maximum sun exposure. And if we're going to do something like solar, we would get maximum sunlighting on it. And so now you got it, the most difficult orientation, because it's where we're the narrowest. So starting at the boundary up by where the park offices, if you go to the edge of the parking lot, our property is just beyond the edge of the parking lot apron in the trees. So that's where the property starts. How far do you have to push the building down? And this is showing the building with the sport courts on the end of it. How far do you have to push it down before it just fits? Where you keep the trees along Maxwellton as a buffer, a noise buffer, site buffer. And this is about where it is. And it ends up putting it just overlapping the existing concrete pad where that our trailer was for the longest time. So you can see about where it would sit with the parking. You can squeeze the parking behind it to leave this area open and be able to do something like, Zumba classes out here in that field, for example. So what are the other issues that got discovered in doing this? Again, the point was, let's pull all these issues out, was this whole kind of fit question. And then also learned, and I never knew that was, but Tom was walking with the walkthrough, pointed out that that's an old well. That little building that sits there behind the concrete pad is an old well. And that's about right here in the middle of the building. So another issue that would need to be addressed and sorted out, it's dried up and it hasn't been used as well in a long time. So, how do you have to deal with that? That's obviously something to deal with. And then another thing that was discovered, and this is Tom's suspicion, and I think it's probably very likely, is that there's a septic drain field and probably a septic tank for the trailer that was there that's out here in this grassy area. So if you're not sitting on top of it, maybe it's okay, but you certainly need to know that it's there and you may have to deal with it. So there's septic over here. There's an old dry well over here. And then this is just as a general point, so we know what we're talking about. If we did this, that area of trees would go away between these buildings, our current building and this. This ends up requiring tree clearance in this area, the end of the building. Obviously, it sticks into the woods, but there's a large clearing here already that was used previously for storage of some things, and it's been used. People have dumped stuff in there, actually. So there's some tree clearing that would happen here, but the majority of the tree clearing would happen between those buildings and here. And you can maybe make a comment about some of those trees you were worried about anyway.
Yeah, some of the larger trees, we actually lost one about 1.5 years, 2 years ago that landed on the office building. Very large Douglas fir snapped off in a windstorm. So it would actually help the health department building to open up some of that. We have a lot of moss in that parking lot area, and it just kind of shows the shade problems that you have being right against a tree line like that.
Yeah. So yeah, there's some good that would come from that. Obviously, it would be a sensitive issue for sure. But anyway, you can see that's clearing. This end is some clearing. And then these trees then would not be disturbed. This would be the access. Oops. I may have screwed this up now. So this would be the access road that would be, oops. Sorry. That would allow maintenance access, both access from the park to the parking and maintenance access to the mechanical spaces, which are at this end of the building in this layout. So that's what this road is to get you from the park into the parking lot or from Maxwell Road. And then this is maintenance access. So anyway, the exercise was just to get through this kind of thing. Where would you actually put it? And what are the issues associated with putting it there? So conversations ongoing. We'll keep moving forward with just trying to answer some of these questions. Obviously, the septic is another question we got to get answered. But what we put in the ground was 4 stakes at these 4 corners. So if you want to go out there and look, they're just 2x2 stakes with a, and they're, this one's right on the edge of the grass. Because they're hard to see, there's a white tape that's tied around some tree branch up in the area where you can see it, and that's your indicator that the stake is there. So if you walk these 4 corners, that's what you'll find.
So if you wanna come out and take a look, and it's a weekday, just swing by the office and grab me, and I'll walk out there with you, and we'll kind of walk through and tromp through the woods together. Take a look at what the boundaries are, and I can walk you through most of this as well.
Can Peggy distribute this PowerPoint to us?
Yeah, I can send it. It was my working copy trying to size this stuff, so I'll send it out.
Perfect.
Thank you, Matt.
Are the basketball courts part of that plan as well? These
future.
This was this also part of the staff feedback. We have, if you look in the comp plan, we have, we've called it a rec center in various elements. I think it's called a rec center officially in the comp plan. The idea was, because we are under pressure when we did the comp plan, because we're under pressure for, competing for indoor court space, and in some cases meeting providers like the school district who are not necessarily aligned with our goals and objectives or interests, or that it would be desirable to have our sport courts under our own parks control at some point during the term of the comp plan. So it's a further out future project, but it makes the most sense to have it as part of this, just to, because the staff officers are going to be in here anyway. So aligning it like this means it's potentially the least costly way to expand the facility by continuing down the existing roof line and just covering. It's another 100 feet to do those 2 courts sideways. So it adds 100 feet to the building, and it's we dashed it out as the future expansion of the facility.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Matt.
Okay.
I'm gonna take back controls.
Yeah, go ahead. It almost broke my computer, but not to.
All right. So Moving on. The only other thing I would, the one thing I wanted to kind of show people, and I don't know that I actually put it in here, but really quick, since we're all together, let me pull up. Here, and just kind of show you guys. I think I put it in here. Yes. So, for moving forward and talking to the county, here is what we are looking at. Let me minimize this. There we go. So here is what we are kind of talking about at Trust Land. So we have the existing, all the green is existing. So this green ADA loop is existing. All of the green trails are existing. The red, we are looking at potentially this year, if not possibly early in 2021, in addition to the ADA loop as of another ADA trail to give another option. We are also looking at down here in all the orange is planned to be in 2020, the end of this year, beginning of next. This would be a loop that gets us out to the stream and gives us a loop trying to stay on fairly level ground as much as possible. We are going to take this trail, I believe actually goes this way a little bit more than the orange indicates, but we're going to capitalize on that and bring that back around to create another loop here. That would all be the end of this year, beginning of next, depending upon permits and timing and feedback from the community. And then this purple would be a future kind of expansion for 2021, maybe into 2022, depending upon timing and layout and such. So that's what I'm going to be taking to the county critical areas people to look at, because there may be some issues with steep slope in some places. There may be some issues with, this is definitely already a wetland, so we would have to watch to make sure we were 100 feet away and make sure we don't need permits. And then we would take it out for community feedback at that point. Any questions on that? Any comments on that?
I think it looks great. And I was there not that long ago, and the trails that were done, not the most recent one, but the one before that, has grown in beautifully. I just think this all looks really great. I'm really happy to hear about putting in another ADA loop, because I know that loop gets a lot of traffic. Yeah, so I think it's a wonderful addition. Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah, I would just say, can you scroll down, Doug, to the lower portion?
Hold on. There?
I just want to highlight a couple of sensitivities. So if you look, can you run your pointer to where Mr. Panzer's property is? Yeah, so one of our most vocal citizens when it comes to Trust Land Trails trail building has his property directly adjacent to that, the loop expansion there, the tan color. So it's something that we just need to be aware of, I think, and sensitive to that the activity to to scope this out, to tag trees, to, walk it and mark it, and then any activity to actually build it is we will get feedback from him, guaranteed.
Right. No, I think Matt, we had already talked about making this stretch. We had talked, Tom had already said he thinks he's going to be about 75 feet away from the property line, as opposed to just the 50 that the board had set. That's just a function of wanting to be a good neighbor. We will do what we can to implement that. And we're going to communicate with all of the neighboring property owners once again before we even start work on this. This is a plan right now, and
Yeah.
we're going to take it to the county and go from there and talk to them and move forward that way. But yes, you're right. We will.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that board members who haven't been here through this cycle, we will get significant feedback from at least him and probably several of the other property owners on the property as we go forward with this part. The other sensitivity is the purple. If you scroll back up to the middle, this is the one that is already partially there. This purple trail, the part that goes up at the very top of this map. That portion is already there, and it goes up to the property owners where there was the dispute last year between two adjacent property owners about trails that the property owners themselves had built on our property. So this would pick up all those the individual little accesses from those properties, if you remember that. So it's we listed as a 2021. That one is also going to have some sensitivities, the routing of that and communicating with those property owners. So just to have in your hip pocket as you go out there and use the trails and look at those things.
Yeah, and I think something else that we're going to have to do prior to really bringing this trail online in 2021 is we're going to have to set a policy as a board. So these property owners, what do we do now? Or Mr. Panzer, if he wants to connect a trail from his property into our property, what do we do? How do we do that? How do we handle that? My thought would be that, if they want to do that, it's at their expense and their cost, and we would charge them for because they're going to want private property beyond this point sign on their trail access so that people don't come onto their property from our trail. So I would suggest that we charge them for the cost of installing a sign. If they want to connect in. If they don't, that's fine. We'll put up barriers just like we did with the Peterson family. Peterson family has been happy with what we did over there. To my knowledge, they have not. I don't know that they've had. I think they've probably had less people on their property since we put in that trail than they had before. So I think they're probably fairly pleased with us at this point.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and you can get their comments before we talk to anybody else. That should be a help with the folks in the neighborhood.
Right, and we will do community outreach to the neighbors. We have all their information. We will send them a letter stating that this is online. You can send us comments. You can send us concerns. You can send us questions. We are currently planning at least a buffer of at least 50 feet, plus or minus 10 feet, which is our policy for all trails from the property line. And that's what we would send out. And if you want to give us comments, we are happy to take them to our board. And if we get to a point where we can have a public meeting, we'll have a public meeting and let them come and talk to commissioners directly. But this would be the forum, and this would be how we would do it right now. Is we'd post it online, we'd send out letters to these people, we'd reach out to them directly, because these are the people that are going to be the most either vocal supporters or vocal detractors on all of this. So we want to reach out to them before we start going out there and creating a trail at this point. Okay. All right. Moving on.
Okay, just one more thing on that. Matt, when I went in and talked with Doug about the minimum 75-foot buffer out there on the end with Panzer's property, I'm going to try and steer as far away from that property line as I can. Just know that topography kind of plays the factor in how we lay these trails out. We get out there on the ground, we're running into pretty heavy terrain, a lot of down trees, stuff like that. So my want is to steer as far away from property lines as we can. And just to go along with that, if we can get possibly like the ADA loop expansion, that should be probably the least controversial of anything we do, because it's nowhere near any property line. It's just near the ADA trail. The sooner we can get that one in the hopper and kind of get that on the schedule within the next month would be great. So if we can get that one approved at the next meeting, that would be a bonus for us to kind of schedule that one and get that on the plans to get out there and get going.
Okay, we'll try and prioritize that. And I would say that you know, I would say it's always the path of least resistance and the path of least impact when we do these. So just you know, we're trying to do the least amount. We're trying to preserve this area so that people, when they walk in it, it's natural. It's what you should see in a forest, not walking, you know, through a completely landscaped park. It's a different feel, and that's what we want. So we are going to take the path of least resistance, the path that's the easiest, the path that's the least impact to the actual forest. That's what we do. Yeah, and yes, we're going to try and keep it at 75 feet away from that property line, but it's going to weave. So that's where we're at.
Right, and I would also just say that, you know, the trails in this park benefit the entire community, right? So there's a balance between the benefit to the community and the perceived, you know, issues that this trail building creates for adjacent property owners. So we got to keep those things in balance, but we can't forget that there's great benefit to the community in this.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. Next is facility usage update. So we did have some action this month on this. The governor did approve new guidelines for youth and adult sports going forward. I did send out an email with, I believe, with that guidance to everybody, but basically it boils down to it's a very similar guidance to what the WIAA, the Washington Interscholastic Athletics Association, so high school sports has. They classified sports into low risk, high, medium risk, and high risk, and then counties into low COVID activity, moderate COVID activity, and high COVID activity, and just kind of classified everything and said, this is what you can do if you are in a low activity county, and it's play games against other teams, play for all sports. You can play in a tournament, but only if you're playing a tournament with all low activity teams from low activity counties. Low and moderate for the low risk and moderate risk sports means that they can play games. We have currently in Island County been a moderate risk county for approximately 4 weeks. We were in low risk, but we were flirting with that line for a while. So if you want to take a look at those, I would suggest you do. The county still had, up until yesterday, their limit of 10 in a group in place with the Board of Health, and you had to have a waiver to play a game. Well, yesterday at their Board of Health meeting, they rescinded that. They took that down. So these governor's guidelines are now all we are going by. So there is no restriction to 10 people in a group anymore. There is no number of people, but you do have to follow. You still have to have your safety plan. You still have to have people wearing masks, socially distant. All that stuff has to be there, but games can happen. If we get down to low, tournament could happen. If we go up to high, we go back to practices with 6 people in a group. So that's kind of where it's at. I have communicated that to our user groups, and the onus is on them to comply with this. If they want to use the fields and play a game, they have to have their return to play plan. They have to have the measures in place. They have to be doing all these things. That's their responsibility, and have their contact tracing info. So they have their team roster, who was there, who all that stuff has to be there. So we're working with groups. I believe Southwood BU Soccer Club is starting to schedule some games coming up. And I know I've communicated a little bit with the community game about their ongoing usage. So we are working with our groups on this, and I'm acting as a resource, but I'm acting as that resource to kind of support them in getting what they need done. Okay, so that's where we are with that. Lakes agreements. So Krista and Eric and I met with the WDFW folks and went through the lakes agreements. We had them updated. I have a sample here. What we had them add in was that it was, instead of it being till 2028, it's a 5-year agreement. The other changes was we're going to have a seasonal meeting pre-season that is in the contract agreement, and that's going to be held between January and March with staff from WDFW and us coming together and arranging that meeting. And we're going to go through what's going on at the site, what needs repair, any capital improvements. We talked about that we could make them written approval. Where is this stuff? Okay, so notice of supplies and repairs. Here it is. Okay, I could give them 10 days notice, 10 business days if we need supplies or repairs on site. If they fail to reply within that time frame, I'm allowed to make repairs or purchase supplies and invoice WDFW 100 per occurrence or 300 per quarter. You know, and I will send those invoices to Derek Hacker within 15 days. And then the vault toilet, we have to sit down with a local pumping company that's on the list provided by WDLI, and you know, then they can invoice directly for that. They did give us everything we asked them to do. They were very amenable to all of our suggestions and changes, and that's what we came up with. I have no problem with these agreements going forward.
Can you go back up to number 2, Doug? The one that was talking about the capital stuff. So what does it say about capital, like actual capital improvements?
Oh, that's.
So like the boat launch improvements, the fall bathroom improvements right there above number 3. Is it saying they're going to submit for them? We're going to work with them on it? What does it say?
Permittee is to notify WDFW of any deficiencies noted or by or reported to permittee with regard to items outside the scope. WDFW will decide what action, if any, should be taken to remedy it. You know, will bear this cost for same. They're responsible for fixing it. We notify them. Capital items currently on site include the boat launch and the permanent vault bathroom. So if there's a major problem, a capital expense, we notify them. They decide what to do with it, and they bear the cost of it.
Right. So that any new capital items added to the site during the term of the agreement,
all on them.
Like, you know, because one of the things we had talked about, I don't know, in passing 2 years ago, was the idea of doing and maybe it was Carrie, we were talking about this, doing a program, but like a kayak storage or small boat storage in that area so that people could store their boats, rent a storage spot from us and store their boats there, and then just easily get them in and out of the lake.
Right.
So do something like that would be under the terms of this number 2.
I would say we're not responsible for any maintenance or repair of any capital items currently in place. That's not really in here. Let me see if it says anything about actual.
Because it says we can operate them.
Right
yeah,
here.
Major alterations.
Improvements to land may be done only with the prior written approval of WEFW.
So we could ask, so something like that, we could make it a capital item and ask them to, you know, run it through to try to find grant money for it, or we could do it this term number 4.
Right, with term number 4, we could ask them to do it, or with either way, we could ask them to do it. And keep in mind that the state has its own special grant categories in the RCO that they don't have to compete with anybody with, and they don't have to provide matching dollars. So they can go out to a grant application, and I believe they've got one pending or in line for the boat launch and a launching float at Deer Lake that I think is coming through in the next year or two. So they have a pool of money that is specifically designated for them. So unless it's something that we see as a really high priority that we really need right now to make things better, I would defer to them and just make the suggestions and go, hey guys, this looks like a really good here.
Right, and it sounds like, and I remember this from talking to them 2 years ago, it sounds like they're, like if we're an active partner with them, they love it, right? So if we say, hey, we got this great plan for this, and we hand them a great plan and say, go find grant money for it, they'll love us for that, right? I mean,
they worked really well with us. Yeah. That they're very happy with us. They like us running these, and they really want to do what they can to improve the sites. And if we come to them and say, hey, we want you to do this, we think this would be great. That's how Deer Lake new launch and launch float came upon us. Was, you know, Tom brought it to me, I brought it to them. We walked all the sites with Derek. We started doing that And then it turned into, it just gets hard. They trust us, and that's part of the problem. They trust us to get it done, and then they don't come out and check on us because they know we're going to get it done. And then when we call them, they know we're going to take care of things or not make it worse. So they trust us a little too much at times. But yes, we have a good relationship with them, and we can capitalize on that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So what I'm looking for on these is approval. That would take a motion, a second, and board approval, and then I can go ahead and sign these and send them back to them, and we'll take these on for another 5 years.
I'm personally good with it. If one of our subcommittee members wants to make the motion, I'm good with it.
I'll make the motion to approve those lakes agreements.
I'll second it.
That a motion?
All in favor?
Jennifer, I.
Krista, aye.
Eric, aye.
Matt, aye.
Josh, aye.
Okay. All right, we're almost done. Home stretch. We have 2 items in new business. We have the restroom pillar repairs. These are the ones that we showed you on the tour. We talked about when we talked about the capital program. We did get a quote for this. We were only able, and with both of these 2 quotes, the issues are of sole provider quotes. They are not of the amount that I would normally bring to the board for approval. However, we have only been able to find one contractor willing to even touch these posts. And we wanted to get these done as expeditiously as possible. The quote we received was for $3,200 to replace the posts that we know are a problem. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to cost $3,200, because he could get in there and find out that when we pull that one post out, another post is bad above it. So this is a base, you know, and if we get more and we have to go higher, we will have to go higher. But I wanted to come in and bring you guys a quote. We tried the people that initially installed these. They didn't want to, they're not doing that anymore. We tried another contractor they recommended. He recommended this guy, Jay Parker. Jay Parker said, yeah, I'll you know, take a look at it. And he's given us a quote for $3,200. I recommend going ahead with this. We want to get this taken care of sooner rather than later.
Did we have an amount budgeted for this?
No, but it does fit within our building repairs line item amount at $3,200. So, and we have not spent money in that line item.
Can you remind which are getting repaired?
So there is the pillar on the south side of the men's bathroom by the concession stand, and both are on that south exposure where they get a lot of that wind, and then one up by the playground, the castle playground, by the bathroom, on the bathroom as well. Those 2.
Does anyone know this Jay Parker?
Tom?
Yeah, he's a long time island guy. One of the contractors I went and talked to is Mark Meyer, who is one of the original volunteers, did tons of the original work up on the picnic shelter and that restroom. Knew the project intimately. He said he wasn't interested and wholeheartedly recommended Jay Parker. He kind of likes challenging projects like this, and this is definitely a challenging project to try and support this and disassemble it. And it's an interesting project, to say the least. So longtime island guy, been here for his whole life, and just word of mouth, he's one of the best guys for this type of project.
Okay, I know Mark Myers, so if Mark recommended him, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, do you want a motion to approve this or what?
Yeah, I'd like a motion second, since it is a sole source for this. I don't want to just approve it out of hand myself. When I can't get a number of quotes, I like to get board approval to move ahead.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the work on the post according to the Jay Parker proposal.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Jennifer, I.
Krista, aye.
Josh, aye.
Matt, aye.
Did we get
Eric?
Okay. Verbally.
Hey, just to follow up with this.
It was overrun. I said Eric guy.
Okay.
Okay.
Just to follow up to go along with this. After our walkthrough, I know Eric expressed interest in us doing a little cleanup and staining sealing on that building. And in the last couple of weeks, pressure washed. We used a deck brightener to kind of clean the wood up, and we've been hand staining the and whole upper with fresh stain.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, just again, a reminder, if you're not speaking, if you could mute yourself, because we do get some feedback at times. So just a reminder on that. So the final thing we have on the agenda, we did get something that Tom has been searching for now for quite some time. Infield mix. We have a specific mixture of that we like that works really well for our softball and baseball infields. This is the specific special, clay dirt mixture that we throw on the infields. I don't know the magic that is in it, but there is specific magic that is in it. Tom has been searching for this, and a few weeks back found a potential supplier for it that, the original supplier we had run out of the specific material, so could not provide it anymore. So Tom, do you want to speak any more on that and add any into that?
Yeah, the original product all our baseball fields were built with was a kind of a natural river deposit out of Blaine up near the border, and they ran out about 5-6 years ago. So our baseball fields, were kind of built to a standard, if you will, through the years. When they ran out, I've tried 3 or 4 different products. Most of them were nowhere near what we had in color or in soil type. So one load I got was extremely sandy. It's too loose. It doesn't bind up. The next one would be too much clay, and it would just get slimy every time it rained or we irrigated. So I haven't been able to find anything compatible. And there's a company out of Moses Lake that's blending this product. It's being used all over the Northwest right now at colleges. The Rainiers, Tacoma Rainiers, redid their whole facility with this product. I've got friends that know the product that have went over and viewed it, looked at it, and they come highly recommended. And so I want to try a truckload of it and see how compatible it is. We always try and keep some on hand for doing pitching mound renovation, or if we edge, we need to bring in material to kind of level everything out. And so we're gonna go ahead and try this product, and hopefully it's very compatible with what we have.
So Tom, quick question before you sign off there. How does this compare with pricing for the same amount of other products that you've tried? Is it a similar price level?
It's a little more expensive. Most of it's trucking. Like I said, the last product I had came from Gig Harbor. So it was cheaper, but the only way I can describe it is it looks like gray sand that we top dress with.
Okay.
This product is more of that dark brown tan color that our fields are. And like I said, I'm just, I want to try one truckload of it, see, get some on the ground, see how it works, stuff like that. At this point, our fields are very stable. We more or less use it for filling low spots, where kids are sliding into the bases a lot, right around home plate, and our pitching mounds. So we're not using a big volume of the product anymore because our fields are so dialed in. But we have to have it on hand, just to do routine maintenance.
Okay.
So if you decide that you're happy with this product, Tom, how many more tons will you need?
About this amount a year, if we just are keeping up on our routine maintenance. that's a pretty good level. It's not like we're bringing in, multiple truckloads of this a year. We're so up on our maintenance that we don't let it get to a point where we're having to do a major renovation.
Thank you.
Where do you store 20 tons of this?
We have a large bin up at the maintenance base that we have. The majority of this is going to go right in there. If there's any spillover, we're going to take it down and put it right on the field, and then we're going to have a large tarp over it to kind of try and keep it dry.
Okay. So again, this is only being brought to the board because it is a sole source vendor. That we can't find anybody else that has a similar product. That's why we're here. We'd need if you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you we'd want a motion and approval, and a second to approve it.
I'll make a motion to approve the infield mix sole source purchase.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Jennifer, I.
Krista, I.
Eric, aye.
Matt, aye.
Josh, aye.
Okay, that passes. And ladies and gentlemen, that is all I have for this evening.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
I will call the meeting, adjourn the meeting at 7:34. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Don't forget to send your email in.
Yes, do not forget to send your email in.
Thank you.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Doug, I just sent you that little graphic that you can share with the other commissioners.
I will do that. Thank you.
Got it. See ya.
Doug,
Hold on.
do I need to see that?
1 second. Let me finish something here before you. Hold on. What the heck? What is it? Why is that not doing that? Stop screen sharing. There we go. Hold on 1 second, Jennifer. I'll be right with you.
Yeah, no worries.